The challenges facing our teens today mean that more than ever, we need to be there to support them and encourage them. The Dr.Stem Show is here to provide discussions about topics that will help promote healthy relationships, self-image, and success for teens, parents, and the community. Our young people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. The Dr. Stem Show, hosted by Dr. Stem Malatini, will foster these discussions and encourage your participation.
Welcome to the Dr. Stem Show. Today we have a special topic that we'll be talking to you about: rising above circumstance. It's a topic that I was discussing with our guest today and all the producers here, and wondering why haven't we heard or talked about this story a long time ago. So today we give you an opportunity to hear from the horse's mouth, is what they say, from Dale Stanton, who will talk to us today about rising above circumstance. Welcome, Dale.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here and appreciate the invitation.
We are more excited than you, actually, and more appreciative than you. Dale is here today because she had the courage to write a book that she calls The Hooker's Daughter, a Boston family saga. And this is a Boston family story. This is a story that is American story. It's an African story. It's a whole wide world story. We all have stories. And I can see you out there, everyone going, she wrote about the hookers, what? Because it's taboo for people to talk about their lives, to talk about how they grew up, what happened in their household. And Dale has been brave enough not only to come out here and share it with you, but she has written a book which she'll talk to us about today. In fact, I asked Dale, how should we describe this segment today? And she wrote to me that I want to tell the world about my story. I want to tell the world about the shocking, stunning account of how I grew up, what circumstances I grew up in, and how I got through, how I became who I am today. And isn't that what it's all about? How do we become who we want to be or who we were born to be with the circumstances that we are growing up in? And I'm talking to you, the teenagers, the youth that are out there. Today is a lesson that you will learn on how you can become the best that you can despite your circumstances. Dale, you talk about, I was reading your book and I was reading some of the background you had, and you shared a quote by Christopher Robin that he said to Winnie the Pooh.
Yes.
I'll start there to have you talk to us about that quote, because that was really good.
Yes, and the quote is, "You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think." I think it really says a lot about how people should and could view themselves, and I feel it's an expression that connotates empowerment.
Yes, yes. And I think it also resonates to what I said at the beginning, to say to people, we don't talk much about the circumstances that we're growing up in or that we're under. But the world see us reacting to it and they wonder, what kind of house is she coming from? So this bravery here with that quote, I think, I just cannot thank you enough for you to be able to share this with us in the world.
I'm delighted. Thank you.
Yeah, and with that, I just want to give you an opportunity to tell the world a little bit about yourself, who you are, a little bit of biography. I think that will be interesting as well.
Okay, I grew up in Mattapan, a Boston suburb, and then I moved out to the North Shore, and now I spend half the year in Arizona and half the year in Massachusetts. I sort of crawled my way up the education ladder as a young person. I didn't really have the opportunity to get any formal education, and it was a big struggle. And again, for all you young folks that are out there listening, perhaps you can pay attention to that all is not lost. Eventually, I went to a business school very briefly. I became a legal secretary and various other opportunities. And then I also acquired a real estate broker's license. And then, as a young woman, my husband became very ill, and I decided to go to nursing school because I was concerned about being able to take care of my children later on in life when his prognosis was going to be poor, was poor.
Yes.
And I did become an RN and practice various types of nursing and worked in mental hospitals and med-surg nursing, and then did medical sales. And then from there, I went on and said enough of all this conventional kind of working, and I decided to open up my own business, of which I knew nothing about. I'm always a little behind the 8 ball in terms of trying to figure out things. And with that, I opened up a business that catered to conventions and conferences that came to Boston, and I would organize their events and tours and any services that they needed for their time here in Boston. And then I spun off a corporate division that would take care of out-of-town guests, international primarily, and then also tours for local Bostonians in and around New England, offering cultural tours. So I did that for over 20 years, and I have to say it was the love of my life. And anybody that has any entrepreneurial ideas, I can't recommend it enough to go ahead and just go for it, which is what I did. I think it took me 2 years to understand who I was, and what I was trying to do. And then when I retired, I decided to write this book. So I feel like I'm in my 4th incarnation.
20 lives like a cat.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How many lives that a cat have?
Yeah.
You can have as many lives as
Oh,
you want,
yeah.
I say. Wow. You know, the way that you talk about your background, it sounds like, why don't we get a little bit about that background so we can have a picture of what your home life was like?
Okay.
Yes.
When I start off my book describing that by the age of 6 years old, I was answering the door for John's. And we lived in a small apartment, and I very much realized that things were not right nor normal. And yet, being so young, I don't know that I could have defined it quite as clearly as I could as an adult. And as I was growing, I encountered a great deal of rejection. A lot of kids, neighborhood kids, weren't allowed to play with me. I was asked to leave the Girl Scouts. I believe I was by age 10. And when I reflect on it, I think, what a sad story that is. What could a nice little girl, which is what I was, do to harm other kids in the group? So through the years, wherever I went, the family's reputation was so well known, and the disgrace, that it really reflected upon us. And I suffered a lot of slings and arrows. Then my sister came out as a lesbian when I was only 9 years old, over 60 years ago. It certainly was not fashionable then, and she was very much scorned, if you will. And it was not like in today's society where we have gay pride parades and marriages and adoption of children. She was thrown into a convent when the police found her after she had run away from home.
Because she was a lesbian.
Because she was a lesbian. And then they put her in a mental institute for observation, which in those days, she was not crazy, trust me. And so she had a very difficult time, and eventually she became homeless for a number of years until she began to find a way. But at that point, she was an aberration in society's eyes. So it was a difficult journey for her as well as for myself.
I'm wondering, in high school, how were you in high school? Did you have any problems in high school that the teachers couldn't put their finger on, because nobody had a clue on what lifestyle you're coming out except the ones that knew the reputation? How were you in high school?
I believe that I functioned quite well, actually. I was very disciplined. I knew things were very much awry, and I promised myself that I had to take care of myself and do the right thing, even though it was not a broad vision, but I worked hard and educated myself in that capacity as best as I could and got good grades. But nobody knew anything, nor did I ever discuss it with anybody. So it was really, again, to say, a very lonely journey, because I kept it all internal and could not bring the problems or the feelings anywhere.
If you were to do it again, would you tell someone today? If you were to go through that life again, or if you were talking to someone who's going through living with a parent that, does that, what would you say to them?
I love that question.
Yeah.
Thank you. I haven't been asked that before, and the answer for me is I don't think I would share it with anybody, because I think as a young person you don't have those tools to be able to do that. And I also think society is a lot different than it was when I was growing up. I think it's not as much as a stigma to be able to go to, like you, a therapist, and to be able to reveal some of the issues that are going on in your life. But in those days, it was frowned upon.
So today you would say to the young people that are listening out there, it's okay to share with someone.
Oh, absolutely. I encourage them to do
Yes.
that, because I think it can be very lonely and very sad to have these isolated feelings of what to do and how to go about it. So they have the benefit of having somebody like yourself available to them that they could go to speak about their issues.
Yes. And the reason why I say that to all of you that are listening out there, because people still, if it's family oriented. Some families still have that taboo that you can't talk about what's happening at home. But as we just heard from Dale, it's damaging for you to keep it within, because it will affect you. You're carrying it. That means it's real in your life. So find somebody that you can tell. She is recommending that, and I would recommend that as well, to say talk to someone about it. So your story, as you say, is one of survival.
Yes, and I want to just add to what you're saying. I think that secrets can become like infections, and if you don't treat them, they fester and they become like monsters.
Yes, yes. With that, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. Today, we do have Dale Stanton, who's talking to us about her book, The Hooker's Daughter. That is her story about the family that she grew up in and how she rose above those circumstances. We'll be right back.
The challenges facing our teens today mean that more than ever, we need to be there to support them and encourage them. The Dr.Stem Show is here to provide discussions about topics that will help promote healthy relationships, self-image, and success for teens, parents, and the community. Our young people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. The Dr. Stem Show, hosted by Dr. Stem Malatini, will foster these discussions and encourage your participation.
Welcome back. We are starting back again. We have our guest, Dale Stanton, who's here today, and I'll show you her book again. She wrote a book, The Hooker's Daughter. Dale, by the way, where can people buy this book?
Well, on my website, www.thehookersdaughter.com. They can also purchase it from Amazon. And also for tablet readers, it's available on all forms, Nook, Kindle, and also from the publisher, Infinite Publishing Company.
Oh, and they have it. I just noticed this, because the one that I have, the book that I have is a PDF copy, but this is the first time I'm seeing the cover. Interesting how you come from this, to that. Can you explain to the audience, maybe they can see what I am seeing? So I'm saying for her to explain the book, because this is her life. It's actually from this picture, and I'll show you the back, to this smiling, happy, I can say a whole lot of joy, peace, grace with the back of the book, the way that it is from then to now. Why don't you explain to us that cover of your book?
Great. I love your observation. There you go. I don't know that anybody ever pointed that out to me, so thank you. Well, this cover I'm actually quite proud of, because my husband, who is not an artist, designed this cover, and I think he really
He did
hit
an
it
awesome
nail on the head, to show a child whose world was in scramble, if you will, and shattered. And I thought he really did a good job. I'm so proud of him and his effort. And again, thanks for noticing the picture on the back.
Yes.
I am at peace. I love my life. I don't take anything for granted. And I'm very appreciative that I open my eyes every day and can embrace the world.
And you know what, saying about that, about the book as well, because I know there are avid readers out there, I will personally purchase 2 copies that I'll also give to you, the listeners, the ones that are watching this show. Write to me and I will purchase 2 of these copies for you, because this is an awesome, the story itself, just by looking here, I could tell the story that there's a wealth of information. I read it and you will be able to enjoy this story as well. So I'm offering you 2 free copies. In addition, if you're not one of those lucky ones, because you know what, some people are not as lucky, you definitely can get this book. As she said, it's on
Amazon.
Amazon.
My website, www.thehookersdaughter.com. For tablet readers, a Nook, Kindle, and all those various modes, and from the publisher, Infinity Publishing.
Excellent. Now back to that story. I am wondering, let me just make it clear though, Dale, because I know I mentioned that the hooker's daughter, and there will be some people that might not understand exactly, what we're talking about. So, I don't mean to offend you, but I just want to make sure that people understand. So Mom actually had, would it be a business, but she had people coming in.
That's
and
correct.
Paying to have, sexual intercourse with
Right.
them. And that was, that's the way that we came up with the hookers. Okay, so that people understand, because people might not
It's
understand.
not rug hooking.
Yeah, right?
It's not hooking rugs.
You're right. You're right. It is not hooking rugs.
But people think sometimes, oh, what's this book about?
And that's why I wanted that clarification, so that people understand the depth of what this little child who is you went through when your mother is bringing different men to the house. And you explained at the beginning that as a 6-year-old, I am opening that door for them, knowing they're going to go to the next room with my mother. And I'm sitting in the next room. They have, intercourse there. She comes out, and I don't know if at that point, did you know that that's what they're doing?
Yes, I don't think in an adult way, but yes, I did understand it to a point. I don't think I had quite the maturity level at that point, but to certainly have a sense of it.
I ask that questions for you parents out there that might have something that you're doing and involving your children and thinking they're only 6 years old, they won't know, they don't understand. And I wanted for Dale to let us know that she said, I understood it. I knew what was going on, because most parents are not oblivious to that, to say, you know what, my kid, does she understand? So I think it's important that they know and be aware that a 6-year-old understood what was going on.
Absolutely.
And was impacted by it, yes.
Totally agree with that.
So can you describe your relationship with your mother?
Yes, it was certainly a complex one. In many ways, I really appreciated what she did. I felt that she saved us from poverty. My father was disinterested in working, or I often felt that he wouldn't even notice if I had a pair of shoes on. And I think that my mother saw the need to go and take the bull by the horns. And so I loved her for what she did for the family. On the other hand, I hated her for what she did to the family. And in many ways, hindsight is easy. I wish that she had used more discretion, and perhaps she could have. I think her boundaries were very fuzzy. They were very poor. And it wasn't just, this didn't happen just in the household, but beyond the environs and beyond the community. And she had no sense of shielding us, her children, my sister and myself, from what was going on. And there were boyfriends in my mother's life, and they were always part of our lives. Nothing was concealed from us, and we were part of it. And lots of things went on: shoplifting, scams, stolen carring, you name it. I mean, there's a lot of things that happened, and we were privy to it all, like it or not. But in a certain sense, I often feel that I wouldn't be here today. It certainly toughened us up. And it was like, just suck it up and, it'll be fine. And it's too bad if you're being thrown out of places or kids are being taken away from you. I do believe that my mother did feel bad when we did suffer. There's no doubt about it. She was actually a very kind and caring, sensitive person who also taught us to be kind and to never shame others, even though we experienced shame. But that was the way we were brought up, and also to honor her and my father, no matter what the conditions were.
You know, let me just, I'm in awe because I didn't know that Dad was around
Oh, yes.
when all this was
Oh,
happening.
yes. He was very, I believe as a young man, of course I didn't know him in that way, that he was very functioning, a bon vivant, if you will, highly functioning. And as the years went on, he kept on slipping, and maybe in today's world he'd be diagnosed as clinically depressed. And he was very non-participatory. However, he had times and moments when he did respond to the family, so there were a lot of highs and lows, and it was difficult.
I can imagine. Let me just, stop you right there. We're going to talk about, no wonder why this topic is called rising above circumstances. You've just had the circumstances that Dale had to go through, what she grew up with. When we come back from this break, she will talk about why we titled this segment, Rising Above Circumstance. We'll be right back.
The challenges facing our teens today mean that more than ever, we need to be there to support them and encourage them. The Dr.Stem Show is here to provide discussions about topics that will help promote healthy relationships, self-image, and success for teens, parents, and the community. Our young people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. The Dr.Stem Show, hosted by Dr. Stem Malatini, will foster these discussions and encourage your participation.
And now back to our discussion. Dale, we talked about rising above circumstances. Can you elaborate upon why we're calling it rising above circumstances?
Well, I saw all the hardships that I ran into and the circumstances that prevailed, that I could either choose to fall off a bar stool dead drunk or forge ahead. And I chose to forge ahead. And no matter what the circumstances were, I felt like one would think of a racehorse perhaps with blinders on, not to be affected by the other horses, and I would go forward no matter what. And a lot of determination and perseverance. And sure, I would fall back at certain points and wonder about my own capacity to be able to do what I wanted to try to do for myself.
I thought when I was reading, your book, and I was preparing for this, I thought more of resiliency.
I like to think I am very resilient. Yes. Even when I spoke of my business earlier, I knew nothing about the business, but I was determined. And even when I went to nursing school for 3.5 years, I had a very ill husband and young children, and I, again, forged ahead. If I could share with your listeners, I'd like to tell a story of, it's a parable. It happens to be one of my favorite ones. It's a story about a king who had a perfect diamond. He loved the diamond. Lo and behold, he dropped it, and a crack developed the length of the stone. Well, the king summoned all the jewelers in the land to see if they could fix it, and all of them said, "You know what, king, sorry. It's irredeemably flawed, it's useless." And then along came an elderly man and said, "Let me take the diamond for a week and see what I can do with it." Well, he knew he couldn't fix it. However, he chose to carve petals on the top of the diamond, and creating a flower, and the crack formed the stem of the flower that he created. So my point is that you can take flaws and turn them into flowers. And nobody is perfect, and we all have deficiencies and problems, and as long as we can look at life in that way, in a positive way, we're able to go forward.
You can turn flaws into flowers.
Yes.
I love that.
Thank you. I love that too.
I love that. I love that.
And as I said before, none of us are perfect, and it's a difficult to be able to be honest with yourself and look within and help yourself and not lament.
And when you talking about turning flaws into flowers,
Yes.
I'm thinking you can't do it alone. Were there people along the way that helped you turn your flaws into flowers?
I would say not really, but yes, in a way I can't discount. First of all, my mother, in her own way, was a person that had a lot of spirit and loved life and seized the moment, and she loved her family. So I do believe she delivered a message of caring and never disparaged my sister and I. So in a certain sense, we had esteem from our mother, despite that she might have broken us down from the other side of the coin. So I think that she was very instrumental in fostering us to look at life in a very positive way. And then my sister, for the years that she was around before she had her own life to try to capture her journey of going into the gay world, she was a mentor to me. Or I was very young. I was 9 years old when it happened. And then I went for therapy when I was 23 years old, which is a lot of years ago, and the stigma for therapy was quite great then. But that was the very first time that I ever chose to reveal what was going on in my life. And that experience served me just beautifully. The therapist was very understanding, which of course one wants to have, but was a guiding light and a wonderful mentor to me.
Excellent, excellent. And it's one of those things that motivated us to start the Dr. Stem show, because then most people, there are certain people that still go with that stigma that I can't go in and talk to someone. But if we do it this way, we have people like you that are saying it works. You need to find somebody you can trust and talk about
Absolutely.
it. Yes.
I used to say, but it was much more than what I'm going to say, but it was a paid best friend.
A paid best friend. I like that, and that's your therapist that she's talking about.
Yeah, right.
That's your therapist that you're talking about. So then one of the things that I know that we talk about in therapy is journaling.
Yes.
Could this have been a part of your journaling?
No.
No.
No. It took me I actually had this story in my head my whole life. Of course, I lived it.
Yes.
But I didn't start writing it till several years ago, because I wanted my children to know their mother, who she really was. And I had shielded them from this information because when they were youngsters, their father was dying and was terminally ill for many, many years, and they suffered. And I didn't want them to have more heartache in their life than what they were already going through.
Yes.
So I didn't do this till several years ago.
Oh, excellent. We're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back with our guest today, Dale Stanton, who's sharing her own personal life of triumph. I mean, she didn't start from triumph, as we talked about earlier, but she talks about how to survive beyond those circumstances that you're living in today. Hooker's Daughter, The Hooker's Daughter is her book, so I hope you'll be able to purchase that and get the whole story, because it's very, very intriguing. We'll be right back.
The challenges facing our teens today mean that more than ever, we need to be there to support them and encourage them. The Dr. Stem Show is here to provide discussions about topics that will help promote healthy relationships, self-image, and success for teens, parents, and the community. Our young people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. The Dr. Stem Show, hosted by Dr. Stem Malatini, will foster these discussions and encourage your participation.
And now back with our show, with our guest, Dale Stanton. Dale, you recall talking about how you started writing the book. How did you develop the interest of writing books?
Well, I mentioned before that I wanted my children to know the story, and that was the impetus to do that. And then again, I had the epiphany that I'll go more forward with it. However, I was going to a writing group that met in a local Panera bakery, if you will, in Swampscott of all places. Okay. and we were not taught to write, but we shared things that we wrote. So I began to write passages from this, and they said, oh my goodness, you really have to put this out there. So that kind of gave me the first inclination that maybe I really could have the courage to do this story. And my husband was very instrumental. He thought it was very amazing, actually. So
we still think it is very amazing. And as we said at the beginning, everyone should have heard about this story, because most of the time when you hear the word hookah being mentioned, it's a negative connotation, and you know, there are things that are said about it, but there's nothing that comes out good about the word, you know, being a hooker.
Sure.
So I think what you're coming out with is you're saying, my mother was a hooker, but look at me and what I became despite what she was going through. And also explaining that, you know what, knowing her, she had some good sides of her, and that was one way of providing as far as she was concerned.
that's right.
Yeah,
right.
if we were to talk to her today, she would tell us maybe that, you know, I didn't know of any other way of making, you know, ends meet.
Absolutely.
We don't know.
She was a product of an impoverished youth and various other problems. So I think that she was a frightened person herself, and this was the thing she did. And as I say, in so many ways, she was a very loving mother.
Yes.
It was very complex.
I can only imagine how difficult that is, because working with teenagers and the families that I work with, the struggles that they go through, I think my message that I want people to understand is people are more complex than what we see at face front most of the time.
Absolutely.
Because if I saw you in the school and I was meeting you in the hallway and talking to you, you know, how's your day? And one day you have a gloomy face and one day you're just crying, or you're fighting with someone, you know, in the hallway, that's all I'm seeing, that behavior.
Sure.
But I could never even fathom or even think that you're coming from a background like you were coming from, which would might be someone steps on your toy and it's not about her. You're fighting because you don't understand where I'm coming from and what I have to deal with.
That's right.
And that's the bravery that we're talking about today. And Dale is talking to us about how do you survive beyond your circumstances. Now, you have siblings, you said.
Yes, I have just my one sister.
Oh, you have one sister. Was she older or younger?
Yes, 6.5 years older.
Oh, she was 6.5 years older.
Yes.
Did you get along with her, or?
Well, yes, and she was a very important person in my life at that time. She was my heroine, my mentor, my savior. She played with me as a kid and saved me in a certain sense as a young child. However, her life took that turn when I was 9, and that changed the whole relationship, because when she left the home, I was really on my own and saw very little of her for about 20 years. I mean, we've come together now, but yeah.
What are some of the things that you have faced talking about this story? Have you overcame some feelings, you know, shame, guilt, anything, going and talking about
absolutely.
it?
People ask me if it's been cathartic. Well, my answer to that always is, you have to have a certain degree of catharsis to do this book to begin with. But it has given me something that I never expected to have happen, was a journey that I didn't expect to be on, like sitting here and having this opportunity with you to be speaking about going forward.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for coming in today. It was revealing and enlightening, I should say. And part of what we do is empowering and inspiring others. So I cannot thank you enough for having the bravery to come and talk to us about it.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been an honor to be invited. I look so forward to meeting you and being here today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.